The dog wouldn't stop scratching, not at the door, not at the walls, but at a single floorboard in a child's bedroom. It had been 9 years since little Izzy vanished from this house without a trace. Everyone had given up. Everyone. Except this dog. The summer heat lingered over the quiet suburbs of Portland, Oregon, wrapping the rows of identical two-story homes in a sleepy haze. Officer Jenna Brooks sat behind the wheel of her patrol SUV, her canine partner Dozer panting softly in the passenger seat. The German shepherd's ears flicked as he watched the neighborhood roll by, alert as always. The call had come in as a basic welfare check. A neighbor reported lights turning on at odd hours in a supposedly vacant house, the same one where a little girl, Isabella Izzy Rodas, had gone missing nearly a decade ago. No new evidence, no suspects. Just a sad story people tried not to talk about anymore. Jenna parked curbside and glanced up at the familiar home. Beige siding, white trim, overgrown grass. The place looked frozen in time. "Let's go, Dozer," she said, clipping on his leash. As soon as his paws hit the sidewalk, Dozer tugged forward, nose twitching. He wasn't acting like this was a routine check. Something had caught his attention. Jenna knocked twice on the front door. No answer. She called it in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 59 at 4728 Elm Street. No response. House looks secure. Gonna walk the perimeter." The dispatcher gave the all clear. The front door was locked, but the side gate wasn't. Jenna moved through the backyard, Dozer low to the ground, sniffing furiously. At the back of the house, one of the basement windows had been cracked open, just enough for a small adult or a determined teenager. Jenna squatted down. The screen was pried loose but not broken. Recent. She radioed again. "I've got signs of entry requesting backup. 10-4, Unit 8 en route." As she waited, Jenna crouched by the window, watching Dozer. He was fixated on something just inside. His tail stiffened. He scratched the base of the wall with both front paws. That's when she noticed it. The smell. Not rot, not mold, something subtler. The stale scent of human sweat, old dust, and something else, something living. When backup arrived, they forced the door. The house creaked as if groaning from its long silence. Dozer pulled Jenna forward through the hallway, past covered furniture and boxes, past rooms where time had stood still. Then he stopped at the bottom of the staircase. The house was cold, quiet, but Dozer wouldn't budge from the stairs. His nose pointed up. "Upstairs?" Jenna muttered. Most break-ins happened through the back or basement. Upstairs made no sense. But Dozer insisted. She unclipped the leash and let him lead. The second floor was coated in a thin layer of dust. Doors hung slightly ajar, and old photographs lined the walls. Jenna noted a family portrait of a man, a woman, and a girl. Izzy. Smiling. Missing. Presumed dead. Dozer stopped at a door with a butterfly sticker on it. He scratched again, harder this time, with an urgency Jenna hadn't seen in years. Not since their first major bust together when he uncovered a hidden weapons stash in a gang house. But this was different. This was almost desperate. Jenna opened the door. Inside was a child's room, frozen in pink. A My Little Pony bedspread, stickers on the mirror, a dusty white dresser with glitter knobs. It hadn't changed in years. Dozer circled, sniffing the floor. Then he stopped and began pawing wildly at a section of the hardwood, just beneath a standing wardrobe. Jenna stepped closer. The floor sounded wrong, hollow. "Good boy," she whispered. She knocked on the wood. Hollow, for sure. She crouched, feeling along the edges. The wardrobe wasn't attached. She gave it a firm push. It groaned and slid forward an inch. Dozer barked once, then twice. Beneath the wardrobe was a faint seam in the floorboards. Jenna pulled out her flashlight and followed it. The boards were warped, but one in particular had a narrow slit near the edge. "A trap door?" She called it in. "This is Unit 59. We may have something unusual, requesting permission to investigate further." As she waited, she turned to Dozer, who sat rigid, staring at the spot. "Whatever you smell, buddy, it's still here, isn't it? If stories like these move you, real heroes, loyal animals, and the truth buried beneath silence, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals on YouTube. Every click helps us bring justice to the voiceless." Permission granted. Backup entered the room. Officers peeled back the warped boards. Underneath was a narrow crawl space, maybe 3 feet deep. Inside were several old cardboard boxes, coated in dust but oddly intact. Jenna grabbed the nearest one. Inside, VHS tapes, dozens of them. Each labeled in black marker, Princess Room, Volume 18, Princess Room, Volume 24, Princess Room, Volume 47. Her blood ran cold. She turned to the officer beside her. "This is no storage crawl. Somebody hid these." The boxes were confiscated immediately, crime scene secured. Outside, Dozer sat at the foot of the house, tail thumping lightly. Jenna knelt beside him, hand trembling as she stroked his fur. "You found it," she whispered. "You found what no one else could." Back at the precinct, forensic techs ran the first few tapes. Most were static, old. But one showed a child. A little girl with blonde hair, sitting on a bed in a pink room. The same girl from the photograph. Same smile, same eyes. But this time she wasn't smiling. She looked confused, uncomfortable. And then a man's voice off camera. "Izzy, show me your princess dance. Just like we practiced." Jenna couldn't breathe. "Turn it off," one of the officers shouted. But it was too late. The damage was done. She stared at the screen in silence. 9 years. 9 years of silence. 9 years of everyone thinking Izzy was gone forever. But she hadn't been gone. She'd been right here. Dozer patted over, resting his chin on Jenna's knee. That night she didn't sleep. Because in the morning they were going back. They were going to rip that house apart. And with Dozer leading the way, they were going to find out what really happened to Izzy Rhodes. Officer Jenna Brooks had seen her fair share of strange calls over the years. Drunken neighbors, domestic disturbances, missing persons that turned out to be nothing more than custody disagreements. But this wasn't one of those calls. She sat at her desk in the precinct, a stale cup of gas station coffee growing cold in her hand, her eyes glued to the paused frame on the monitor in front of her. Izzy Rhodes, 9 years old when she vanished, blonde hair and soft curls, blue eyes so big they seemed to take in the world all at once. Now, staring back at Jenna from a faded VHS tape, she looked smaller, frightened. Her face wasn't marked with bruises or visible injury, but there was something haunting behind those eyes, a knowing fear, a rehearsed stillness. Behind her, Dozer lay curled up, nose resting on his front paws. Jenna reached back and scratched the thick fur between his ears. "You were right," she whispered. "You knew there was something." The tape was labeled Princess Room, Volume 47. They had over 30 tapes in evidence already, with more coming from the scene as forensics worked their way through the crawl space. Every single one bore the same eerie title. But what haunted Jenna the most was what she hadn't seen yet. What might be on the tapes labeled Volumes 1 through 46. Or worse, Volume 100 or beyond. She stood and stretched, grabbing her gear. "Come on, Dozer," she said. "We're going back." The house at 4728 Elm Street had become a circus by 10 o'clock a.m. Yellow police tape surrounded the perimeter. 2 vans from Child Protective Services had arrived, along with a forensic team and a news truck already trying to set up on the corner. Neighbors whispered on their porches. Rumors spread like brush fire. Jenna flashed her badge and ducked under the tape, Dozer trotting faithfully at her side. Detective Hank Morrison was already inside, his sleeves rolled up and clipboard in hand. He nodded when he saw her. "Brooks, good work yesterday," he said. "Your dog found more in one night than we've found in 9 years. "He was obsessed with that wardrobe," Jenna replied. "And now we know why." Morrison gestured toward the staircase. "Let's take another look downstairs. We're starting to think there's more to this place than just one hidden compartment." They descended into the basement. The air was damp, thick with the smell of mildew and something else. Chemical, almost like cleaning solvent. Dozer's ears perked as he sniffed the air. He let out a low growl. The washer and dryer had been moved aside, exposing the crawl space and false wall behind it. The forensic team had pulled the panel open and discovered a narrow tunnel just wide enough for a man to crawl through. Fairy lights lined the ceiling, pink ones. "What kind of psychopath builds something like this?" one of the techs muttered. Jenna crouched down and peered inside. The tunnel looked like it had been crafted by a skilled hand. Professionally cut wood, soundproofed foam along the sides, even ventilation ductwork rerouted to mask airflow. Dozer stepped forward, nose to the ground. "I want to go in," Jenna said. Morrison raised an eyebrow. "We've got techs for that." "She trusts me," Jenna replied, jerking her thumb toward Dozer. "And this isn't just evidence anymore. There could be someone down there." Morrison paused, then nodded. All right, but keep your radio on. The tunnel was dark and cramped. Jenna crawled slowly, flashlight in one hand, the other resting on Dozer's harness to keep him steady ahead of her. The pink lights were unplugged halfway down, but glowed faintly from battery packs attached with zip ties. The tunnel opened into a small room, 10 feet by 12, carpeted floor, pink wallpaper with Disney princesses. A twin mattress sat on the ground, its sheets child-themed but faded with time. Stuffed animals lined one wall, some missing eyes or limbs. A television sat on a metal stand in the corner, connected to both a VCR and DVD player. But what chilled Jenna to her core were the cameras. 2 tripods, 1 ring light, and dozens more tapes stacked in milk crates beside the mattress. She stood and slowly walked the perimeter. On a small table were art supplies, markers, coloring books, stickers, all child-appropriate, all used. A white wooden dresser sat beneath a tiny barred window that wasn't large enough for even a child to crawl through. This wasn't a torture chamber. It was a twisted nursery. Dozer whined and sat near the mattress, his gaze fixed on the opposite wall. Jenna knelt beside him. There was a door, small, wooden, painted pink. Locked. She tapped her radio. Detective Morrison, I've found another sealed door. Do not open it yet, his voice crackled back. Wait for backup. Understood. But Dozer was already up and pacing. He let out a short, urgent bark. Someone was in there. Jenna turned the knob gently. Locked, yes, but old. The kind of lock a sharp nudge could splinter. She didn't wait for orders. She slammed her shoulder into the wood. Once, twice. On the third hit, it cracked. Dozer rushed inside and froze. She followed. It was another room, smaller, dimmer. A girl sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. She looked maybe 14, thin, pale. Her hair was long, tangled. Her clothes were a faded pink nightgown with unicorns. She looked up at Jenna and screamed. No, you're not real! You're not real! Dozer whimpered and backed up, tail low. Easy, Jenna said, hands raised. I'm a police officer. You're safe now. The girl cowered into the corner. Daddy said you'd come one day. He said not to believe you. Sweetheart, what's your name? No answer. Izzy? Jenna asked softly. The girl blinked. You remember Izzy Rhodes? The girl's eyes narrowed. That's my name. Jenna swallowed hard. Your mom is looking for you. She never stopped. You're safe now, I promise. Izzy stared at Dozer. Is that a real dog? Yes, his name's Dozer. Dozer let out a small bark and slowly approached, lying down in front of her. Izzy reached out a trembling hand and touched his fur. You're warm, she whispered. You're real. Jenna tapped her radio again. Morrison, I found her. It's Izzy. She's alive. The silence that followed felt like a lifetime. Then, we're on our way. 20 minutes later, paramedics gently carried Izzy out of the basement. Flashbulbs popped from the news crews outside, and neighbors gasped as the girl, thin, shaking, barefoot, was wrapped in a blanket and loaded into the ambulance. Elaine Rhodes, her mother, had already arrived, her face pale and lined with disbelief. When she saw Izzy, she broke into sobs. My baby, she whispered, my baby girl. Izzy looked at her through the ambulance door. I thought you were dead, she said. Elaine pulled her close. Never. I never stopped looking. Jenna stood back, her hands on Dozer's collar. You did good, partner, she murmured. Real good. Dozer licked her hand, then turned to watch the ambulance pull away. There would be questions, legal battles, therapy, grief. But for the first time in 9 years, Izzy was alive. And the truth, buried so deep in silence and floorboards, was finally clawing its way to the surface. The police station was quieter than usual that night. The hallway lights buzzed softly overhead as Officer Jenna Brooks paced just outside interview room B. She'd been on dozens of high-stakes calls in her career, domestic disputes, armed standoffs, even a hostage situation at a gas station out in Scappoose. But nothing like this. Nothing that clung to her skin and refused to let go. Inside the room sat Elaine Rhodes, her hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup of coffee she hadn't touched in over an hour. She'd given her statement, walked them through every heartbreaking detail, from the night Izzy vanished, to the slow unraveling of her marriage, to the cassette tape that started it all. Izzy, meanwhile, was with a female social worker and a trauma nurse in a separate room. Jenna wasn't privy to everything they were discussing, but she knew one thing. They were just scratching the surface of the damage. Detective Hank Morrison appeared beside her, rubbing his temples with one hand. "She remembers some things," he said quietly, "and others, not so much. Probably a mix of trauma blocking and what her father told her to believe." Jenna crossed her arms. "She really thought the world ended?" Morrison nodded. "According to the psychologist, Charles told her there'd been a nuclear war, that she and her father were the only survivors, that everyone else was dead, including Elaine." Jenna exhaled hard. That poor girl. He kept her isolated, manipulated, made himself the only source of information. "And when she hit puberty?" Jenna asked, her voice cold. Morrison's jaw tightened. "He convinced her that they had to repopulate the world, told her it was her duty." Jenna looked away, her throat tightening. "We need to make sure he never sees the light of day again." Morrison didn't respond right away. Then he said, "He's here, brought in 15 minutes ago. He's in the holding cells." Jenna blinked. "He turned himself in?" "Not exactly. Patrol picked him up at a house on Riverside Drive, and he wasn't alone." Jenna's stomach dropped. "Who else?" "6 other men, and Matthew Tenko." She felt Dozer stir beside her, his ears twitching. The dog always knew when her mood changed. Morrison handed her a printed list. "They're calling themselves the Family Sanctum Fellowship. They've been passing tapes, rotating meetings between homes. Charles was the leader, according to initial interviews." Jenna scanned the names. One of them was a substitute teacher in Hillsborough. Another ran a plumbing business out of Gresham. Ordinary men, neighbors, coaches, dads. Her blood went cold. "What else?" she asked, her voice tight. "We seized over 300 tapes and digital files from 2 homes so far. More are still being processed, and it's bad, Jenna, real bad." An hour later, Elaine was finally reunited with Izzy in a quiet interview room with couches instead of interrogation chairs. Izzy sat cross-legged, clutching a small plush bunny a nurse had given her. Jenna stayed in the observation room, watching through the two-way mirror. Elaine kept her tone soft, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. "You remember the beach trip?" she asked. "The one where you built that sandcastle with 6 towers?" Izzy hesitated, then gave a small nod. "It got washed away." Elaine smiled through tears. "It did, but you said it was okay. You said we'd build a better one next time." Izzy shifted the bunny in her arms. "Is there going to be a next time?" "There's going to be so many next times," Elaine promised. "We'll get you into school, meet friends, eat food that doesn't come in a plastic tray." Izzy looked skeptical. "But Daddy said the outside was poisoned." Elaine reached forward slowly, touching her daughter's hand. "He lied. Not just about that. About everything. There was no war, baby. The world kept turning." Izzy's eyes filled. "Then why didn't you come get me?" Elaine's voice cracked. "Because I didn't know where you were. I searched. I called every number, put up posters, talked to reporters. But your daddy, he was very good at hiding." Izzy looked down. "He told me you left because I was broken." Elaine shook her head. "Never. You are perfect." Outside, Jenna stood next to Morrison. "She's going to need years of therapy," Morrison said. "And Elaine's going to need support, too. Their whole lives are upside down." "She still asks for him," Jenna said, "even after all that." "He raised her," Morrison replied grimly. "He poisoned every belief she had." Jenna turned to her canine partner. Dozer sat beside her, calm and watchful. "I need to see him," she said finally. Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Charles?" She nodded. "I want to hear what he says. I want to know what goes through a man's head when he builds a bunker under his own house for this." The holding cell smelled like disinfectant and damp concrete. Charles Rodes sat on a metal bench, hands folded calmly in his lap. He looked more like a tired accountant than a man accused of unimaginable crimes. He looked up when Jenna entered. "Officer Brooks," he said politely, "you're the one with the dog. His name's Dozer." Charles smiled faintly. "Fitting. He broke through where no one else did." She sat across from him. "Why, Charles?" He tilted his head. "Why what?" "Why take her? Why keep her? Why do all of it?" Charles shrugged. "She was mine. I made her, fed her, protected her. Who's to say that's not love?" Jenna's jaw clenched. "Because love doesn't isolate. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't do that." "She was never hurt," he said simply. "Never hit, never screamed. I educated her, read to her, sang her lullabies." "And raped her?" Jenna snapped. Charles paused. "I never forced her." "She was a child, Charles. She didn't know what consent was. You brainwashed her into thinking it was her duty." He didn't flinch. The world outside is cruel. I gave her peace. Safety. You gave her a prison. He leaned forward. No, I gave her a sanctuary. Jenna stood, fury rising in her chest. No jury in the world is going to see it that way. You're going away forever. And she's going to live a real life without you. As she turned to go, Charles called out softly, She'll come back. They always come back to what's familiar. Jenna didn't respond, but in her mind she thought of Dozer's teeth, of Izzy's scream, of Elaine's tears. And she knew, some things you don't come back from. Outside the cell, Morrison waited with a file in his hands. We've got something else, he said. Izzy wasn't the only one. Jenna felt her stomach turn. How many? We don't know yet, but there are names, faces, timestamps, other kids, other rooms, possibly from different states. Jenna stared at the ceiling. God help them. We're going to need the FBI, Morrison said. This goes way beyond Portland. She nodded. And Dozer? He's already cleared for federal task force duty. They'll want him. Jenna looked down at her partner. He wagged his tail, oblivious to the dark tide still rising around them. You ready for round 2, boy? Dozer barked once, sharp and confident. Justice wasn't done yet. The following morning, the sky over Portland was gray and low, a blanket of fog rolling in from the river as if the whole city had been holding its breath overnight. Officer Jenna Brooks sat in the back lot of the precinct, her patrol SUV still parked beneath the aging oak trees that framed the department's parking garage. The air smelled like wet pavement and old pine needles. Dozer lay across the back seat, half asleep but still alert, ears twitching at every passing sound. Neither of them had really slept. The raid on the Riverside Drive house, the one where Charles Rodas and 6 other men had been arrested, was supposed to be the end of it. A chapter closed. A child rescued. But the boxes of tapes recovered there, and at a second house in West Lynn, suggested something darker, something bigger. Jenna sipped bitter coffee from a paper cup and opened the manila envelope that had just landed on her desk less than an hour ago. Inside were stills pulled from the tapes, faces blurred, timestamps visible. Most of the footage was dark, low quality, and nauseating. The kind of evidence that couldn't be unseen. And worse, it wasn't just Izzy. It was other children, at least 5 so far. Some of them couldn't have been older than 4 or 5. Boys, girls, different races, different rooms. But the setup was always the same. Pink walls, soft toys, lights strung up like a child's fantasy. The same nightmare. Jenna slammed the envelope shut and rubbed her temples. You okay? A voice asked from behind. It was Detective Hank Morrison. He looked like he hadn't slept either. I've been better, she said. Same. He leaned against the SUV, glancing at Dozer. You know he's becoming a bit of a legend around here, he said with a faint smile. We're getting calls from other precincts asking for him on loan. Jenna chuckled dryly. He'll go wherever I go. Morrison's smile faded. We've ID'd 2 more kids from the tapes, one from a missing persons case in Spokane, another from Bakersfield. Jesus. We're contacting their families now, but there's more. Plenty we haven't even begun to match. Jenna looked out at the parking lot. Rain started to spit gently against the windshield. So it wasn't just Charles? No, Morrison confirmed. And it wasn't just Matthew Tenko either. The group, this family sanctum fellowship, it's a national ring. Tapes are passed by mail, encrypted cloud drives, even secret meetups. Charles was producing most of the content, but others contributed. Do we know who filmed the Spokane girl? Jenna asked. We think it might be a man named Leonard Price. Lives outside Boise, on a ranch, retired military. His name came up in a few of the emails we pulled from Charles's laptop. Jenna shook her head slowly. This thing is cancer. Yeah, and we're just finding the first tumor. Later that afternoon, Jenna and Morrison stood in a quiet hospital hallway just outside room 406. A whiteboard on the door read, Isabella R. Izzy had been checked in overnight for a full medical evaluation, physical and psychological. Elaine hadn't left her side since. The girl had slept most of the time, the weight of years of darkness finally lifting from her chest. Jenna hadn't seen Izzy since the rescue. She wasn't sure if she should. But when the door opened and Elaine peeked her head out, there was something in the mother's eyes. Relief, exhaustion, and a soft gratitude. She wants to see you, Elaine said. Jenna stepped in. Dozer followed behind her, padding gently across the linoleum. Izzy sat up in bed, clutching a small blue elephant toy. Her blonde hair had been washed and brushed, now resting on her shoulders like a fragile curtain. Her eyes brightened when she saw the dog. "Hi, Dozer," she said softly. He wagged his tail and rested his chin on the edge of her bed. Jenna approached slowly. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Izzy shrugged. "Tired, but better." Elaine smiled weakly. "She ate a full meal this morning, eggs, toast, and 1.5 pancakes." "That's more than I ate," Jenna joked. Izzy's mouth curled into a faint smile. "Mom says you're the one who found me," she said. Jenna shook her head. "Dozer did, I just followed him." Izzy reached forward and scratched his ear. "He smelled me," she said, "even through the walls." "That's what he's trained for, he doesn't give up." Izzy was quiet for a moment. "Are there other girls like me?" Jenna and Elaine exchanged a look. "There were others," Jenna said carefully. "But we're finding them now, and helping them." Izzy looked down at her elephant. "Will they be okay?" "We hope so," Jenna said. "But they'll need people like you, people who don't give up." That evening, Jenna met with Special Agent Derek Kohler from the FBI at a small federal field office near the Portland airport. Kohler was in his 40s, clean-cut and briskly efficient. He wore a gun like it was part of his skeleton. "We're taking over the case," he said flatly. "Effective immediately." Jenna crossed her arms. "We're not stepping aside." Kohler lifted an eyebrow. "You're not being benched, Officer Brooks, quite the opposite. We want you and Dozer on the task force." Jenna narrowed her eyes. "Why us?" "Because you cracked it. You trusted your dog's instincts when everyone else thought the house was cold. You uncovered the first tapes. You followed the thread when no one else did." Jenna hesitated. "This isn't just Portland anymore." "No, we've got probable links in Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Texas, and at least one case flagged by Interpol out of British Columbia." "You've confirmed all this already?" "We're confirming it now. We've got agents on flights and forensic teams ripping through cloud servers. But we need boots on the ground, someone who knows the rhythm of this case." He tapped the table between them. "We think Dozer can detect where others can't, especially if Charles left scent markers in other locations. Objects tied to victims, clothing, toys." Jenna looked down at the file in front of her. So many names, so many empty boxes checked missing, endangered, last seen with family friend. She looked at Dozer, who sat loyally at her side. Then she nodded. "All right," she said, "we're in." Back in the hospital that night, Elaine sat in a chair by Izzy's bed, gently stroking her daughter's hair as the girl drifted off to sleep. "I talked to the doctors," she whispered. "They said you're strong, you're going to be okay." Izzy murmured something but didn't open her eyes. Elaine kissed her forehead and settled into the chair. The lights in the room dimmed, but her eyes stayed open, because she knew this wasn't over, because monsters don't always live under beds. Sometimes they build them, and sometimes they smile while doing it, but now they were unmasked. And this time, the hunters had a dog with a nose for truth. The Oregon state line faded behind them just after sunrise, the highway stretching ahead in a long gray ribbon across the Columbia River Gorge. Officer Jenna Brooks sat behind the wheel of the black Suburban issued by the FBI task force, sipping lukewarm coffee from a travel mug. Dozer sat in the back seat, harnessed in, alert but relaxed, his head poking between the seats like a silent co-pilot. They were headed to Boise, Idaho, more specifically to a remote property outside Eagle Creek. His name was Leonard Price. He was 61, a retired Marine, a man with no children of his own, no record of prior offenses, and yet, according to several decrypted video files and chat transcripts, he had been corresponding with Charles Rodas for at least 7 years. A handwritten return address had been found on the inside of a box containing one of the tapes labeled Princess Room Volume 114. The handwriting matched a signature from a letter Price had written to a local paper 3 years earlier about zoning laws and property taxes. And now he was their top lead. Jenna adjusted the mirror and glanced at Dozer. "You ready to sniff out another one, buddy?" Dozer let out a short huff, tail wagging once. The closer they got to the property, the quieter Jenna felt. Something about these rural drives, long stretches of farmland, pine forests lining the 2-lane roads, the occasional beat-up mailbox leaning into the wind, reminded her how easy it was for monsters to hide. No sirens, no neighbors, just space and silence. FBI Special Agent Kohler rode shotgun, flipping through the photos in the case file. "He built this house himself," Kohler said. "Contractor friend confirmed it. No blueprints ever filed with the county. Said he wanted maximum privacy." Jenna glanced sideways. "You think we'll find another bunker?" "I'd bet money on it." Kohler muttered. "And if your dog starts scratching at any furniture, I'm going to knock down every wall in the place." They pulled up to the property just after 10 a.m. The place was quiet, too quiet. A sprawling log cabin nestled into a wooded hill. Gravel driveway, barn in the back. An American flag hung limp on the front porch. No movement. Kohler signaled the other two black SUVs behind them, and agents fanned out quickly, forming a perimeter. Guns were drawn, vests snapped tight, radios crackling. Jenna gave the nod to Dozer. "Go find." Dozer leapt from the back seat, nose already working the air. "FBI," one of the agents called out. "Leonard Price, come to the door now." No answer. "Let's go." Jenna and Kohler were the first through the door, Dozer leading the way, his paws almost silent on the wood floors. The interior was rustic. Stone fireplace, leather recliner, dusty taxidermy lining the walls. One deer, two coyotes, a bear head with glassy eyes. But Dozer didn't stop to look. He moved through the living room, paused at the hallway, then took a sharp right into the kitchen, and froze. He let out a low growl. Jenna moved beside him. The kitchen was spotless, too spotless. Fresh lemon cleaner still hung in the air. On the counter sat a coffee mug and a half-eaten bagel. "Someone was just here," she said. Dozer scratched at the floor near the pantry, then sat and stared. Kohler signaled an agent to check the garage. If he bolted, he didn't go far. Jenna knelt by the pantry door. No visible locks, no keypads. But the handle was slick, cleaner than the others. She pulled it. Shelves, canned food, dry goods. And at the bottom, an odd square pattern on the floor. A trapdoor. They pried the panel open slowly. It groaned like something in an old horror movie. Beneath was a narrow staircase leading into darkness. Jenna switched on her flashlight and descended first. Dozer followed, Kohler and two agents behind. The space below was concrete, cold and windowless. One overhead bulb dangled on a long cord, casting shadows on the bare walls. In the center of the room sat a child's bed, pink, plastic. A knockoff Disney comforter pulled tight over the mattress. And on the desk next to it, a laptop still open. Jenna stepped forward. On the screen was a paused video. A young boy, maybe 6, sitting on that same bed crying. Dozer growled again and scratched at the corner. Jenna followed his cue. Behind a small dresser was another box. This one plastic, duct-taped shut. Kohler opened it with the utility knife. Inside, several DVDs, a USB drive, and a manila folder marked Members. "Bingo," he muttered. Then a voice echoed behind them. "I wouldn't move if I were you." Everyone spun. Leonard Price stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding a hunting rifle. His eyes locked on Jenna. "I know who you are," he said. "The dog lady." Jenna didn't flinch. "Put the weapon down, Leonard." "You think I'm the monster," he said calmly. "But I saved them. From what's out there. I taught them love. Real love." "Leonard." He raised the rifle. Dozer lunged. The gun went off with a deafening crack, but the shot went wide. Dozer clamped down on Leonard's arm, dragging him backward into the wall. Kohler and the agents moved in fast, tackling him to the ground, the rifle spinning across the floor. Leonard screamed as Dozer growled, his teeth sunk deep. "Call him off," one agent yelled. "Dozer off." Dozer released instantly and backed away, but remained in guard stance, eyes locked on the suspect. Leonard sobbed, blood running down his sleeve. "You don't understand," he wheezed. "We were building something pure." "You were building a nightmare," Jenna spat. Back in Portland that evening, Elaine sat on the living room floor of a safe house, helping Izzy color a map of the United States. A therapist had suggested it. Let her visualize where she might want to go someday, where life could start over. "Can I visit the ocean?" Izzy asked. Elaine smiled. "You can go anywhere, sweetheart. The world's open now." Izzy colored in California. "And here," she said, pointing to Oregon, "this is where I'll always be from." Elaine kissed the top of her daughter's head. "No matter where you go, I'll be right here." In the weeks that followed, arrests were made across 7 states. 10 more men, 2 women, and a tech engineer who had built the encryption system for the group's file-sharing server. Some resisted, most confessed. The FBI called it one of the most significant domestic child exploitation busts in U.S. history. But Jenna Brooks didn't care about headlines. She cared about names, faces, children, and she made damn sure Dozer was with her every step of the way. The courthouse smelled like old wood, recycled air, and tension. Officer Jenna Brooks sat in the back row of the courtroom, her canine partner Dozer resting quietly beside her feet. The German Shepherd had become something of a local celebrity. His face featured on the department's newsletter, his name trending in hashtags like "Had Dozer the Hero" and "Had Justice Dog." But Dozer didn't care about any of that. Today he was just watching, same as Jenna. Across the aisle, Elaine Rhodes sat holding Izzy's hand. The girl, now just weeks away from turning 15, wore a navy blue dress and a silver butterfly necklace. Her hair was brushed, her posture straight, but her fingers trembled slightly as the court clerk called the case number. The State of Oregon versus Charles Rhodes. A ripple moved through the courtroom as the defendant was escorted in. Charles looked older than his 48 years. His skin was pale, his eyes bloodshot. But what chilled Jenna most was how calm he appeared, like he was attending a parent-teacher meeting, not facing 37 federal charges ranging from kidnapping to possession and distribution of child pornography to rape of a minor. The judge began reading the charges aloud. The room was silent except for the occasional clicking of reporters' pens and the quiet buzz of the courtroom fans. When the prosecution presented their evidence, a fraction of the 700-plus tapes recovered, Jenna glanced at Izzy. The girl didn't look away. She didn't cry. She simply held her mother's hand and stared ahead, as if watching someone else's life being played on a screen. 2 hours later, the judge recessed for deliberation. Jenna and Dozer stepped outside into the courtyard, the summer air heavy with moisture. A few news cameras lingered behind barriers, but no one approached. This wasn't a press frenzy. It was something quieter, heavier. Elaine found her on the stone steps. "He hasn't said a word," she said, "not once since his arrest." Jenna nodded. "He won't, not unless it benefits him." "He always was a coward in real life," Elaine murmured. "Only brave when the lights were off." Izzy wandered a few steps ahead, Dozer trailing her protectively. "She wants to go back to school in the fall," Elaine said. "That's a big step." "She's scared, but she says if she doesn't start trying, he wins." Jenna looked toward Izzy. "He doesn't get to win anything," Elaine sighed. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Jenna replied. "You survived, she survived, that's the win." Inside the courtroom, the jury returned swiftly. Guilty, on all counts. Charles showed no reaction as the verdict was read. Not even when the judge denied bail and set sentencing for the following month. But as he was led out in cuffs, he turned his head slightly, just enough to look toward Izzy. Dozer growled. Low, protective, final. The bailiff tightened his grip and pushed Charles forward. In the weeks that followed, the case would go national. A 60-minute segment titled "The Secret Under the Floorboards" aired in prime time. Jenna gave a single interview, on her terms, to a local reporter she trusted. She spoke not of horror, but of recovery, of how the system didn't fail entirely because someone listened, because a dog refused to stop scratching, because a girl held on. Dozer appeared beside her in the interview, seated tall, calm, steady. "The truth was there the whole time," Jenna said. "We just had to pay attention." Izzy began therapy twice a week. She struggled with nightmares, with trust, with the guilt all survivors carry even when they shouldn't. But she also joined a writing group and a self-defense class. She asked Jenna if she could take Dozer for walks on weekends. Elaine and Jenna shared coffee every Sunday morning, sitting on a park bench while Izzy and Dozer explored the green grass together like old friends healing in new skin. One Sunday, as they watched Izzy jog ahead with the dog, Elaine turned to Jenna. "What happens to you next?" she asked. Jenna shrugged. "The task force still needs me. We've got leads in Arizona, Ohio, and a possible case near Jacksonville." "And Dozer?" "He's coming with me, always." Elaine smiled. "You ever think about writing a book?" Jenna laughed. "You sound like the news guy." "Maybe you should." Jenna paused, watching Izzy twirl with the dog. "Maybe I will someday." It was raining the night Charles Rhodes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Elaine didn't attend. Izzy didn't either. They chose a different kind of closure. Instead, they invited Jenna and Dozer to their small apartment for takeout pizza and a Pixar movie marathon. They laughed, they cried, they threw popcorn, and when Izzy finally fell asleep on the couch, curled up beside Dozer, Elaine looked at Jenna and whispered, "I think we're going to be okay." Jenna believed her. 6 months later, Salt Lake City, Utah. A small team of officers stood outside a modest single-story house just before dawn. A warrant had been secured for a suspect. Another man linked through encrypted email threads uncovered on Leonard Price's seized laptop. Inside, a single camera pointed at a pink-painted wall. A child's toy chest sat under a window. Jenna moved slowly through the hallway. Dozer was ahead of her, nose to the ground. Suddenly he stopped, ears stiff, tail low, and he scratched. Jenna didn't hesitate. "Team, I've got something. South wall, back bedroom, Dozer's hit. Another hidden room. Another child rescued that same day." The girl was 7. Her name was Lila. That night, Jenna and Dozer sat quietly in their hotel room, the Utah mountains casting shadows against the stars. She stroked his back and whispered, "Still not done, huh?" He licked her palm once and then curled up beside her boots. Final scene. Portland, Oregon. 1 year later, the city had returned to its usual rhythm: gray skies, soccer moms, food trucks, and the smell of roasted coffee drifting from downtown cafes. At a small ceremony outside the Portland Police Bureau, Jenna and Dozer stood beside Chief Alvarez as he unveiled a bronze plaque beneath a flowering cherry tree in the public garden. It read, "In honor of Dozer, K-9 officer and hero, who reminded us that justice sometimes walks on 4 legs. He never gave up the scent." Izzy was there. So was Elaine. So were the families of other rescued children. Tears were shed. Hands were held. And afterward, Izzy read a poem she'd written out loud. It ended like this: "We grow from the cracks. We sing through the scars. And we remember, even when the world forgets." Thank you so much for following Dozer's journey and this powerful true-to-life story about courage, persistence, and the silent heroes among us. Now I'd love to hear from you. What would you do if your dog led you to a secret no one believed existed? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more stories about the animals who uncover truth, save lives, and never give up. Stay safe, stay aware, and always trust your instincts.